All right, we are live. Sarah Kouba in the house. Let's go.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for sharing part of your lunch hour with me. My name is Sarah Kouba. I serve as the general manager for the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District. So in that role, I'm responsible for helping regulate, conserve, preserve, protect a portion of the Gulf Coast aquifer, which is your primary source of water for the communities. And today, though, I'm not going to be talking about water, so I'm very excited about that. I'm going to be talking about leadership. And like most leaders, my perspective wasn't formed in a single role or a single industry. It's just been shaped by success, failures, great mentors, difficult conversations, accumulation of experiences over a period of time. So before we dive in, I do think it's only fair to spend a few minutes kind of letting you know more about my background and why I think I have skin in the game with my perspectives on leadership. So I did write it down, and I'll try to chop through this. So I have more than 2 decades of leadership experience spanning disaster recovery, infrastructure operations, public policy, water resource management, organizational transformation. I've built a career centered on strategic planning, operational excellence, and mission-driven leadership. So my experience includes leading nationwide operations, managing large multidisciplinary teams, directing complex merger and acquisition integrations, developing policy, regulatory framework, guiding successful organizational restructures, and that's both domestic and international. Throughout my career, I've been responsible for aligning people, processes, resources to achieve measurable results, navigating complex stakeholder environments. So I was a scheduling director for Arxis Engineering and Inspection Solutions. And while I was there, I oversaw operations across 7 states. I had more than 150 personnel, including managers, scheduling teams, inspectors, field leadership. I coordinated resource development, optimized operational efficiency, OPEX, maintained profitability targets. I led the integration of 4 acquisitions between 21 and 23. And if you're not familiar with merger acquisitions or private equity, that's a big flex. That's a lot in a 2-year span. And prior to entering engineering and infrastructure, I spent much of my career focused on disaster resilience and recovery. So I was disaster repair program director for Houston Habitat for Humanity, where I launched what became Habitat for Humanity's largest repair program globally, and that's over 2,100 affiliates. So I scaled operations from a $150,000 annual program to a $13 million recovery initiative. And following Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Imelda, the 2021 Winter Storm Uri, I directed emergency response and long-term recovery efforts that restored more than 1,000 homes while maintaining processes that I developed. So my work also extended into regional resilience planning and disaster policy. I served on Houston's long-term recovery committee and disaster advisory committees. I was selected as one of 8 leaders in the City of Houston Resilience Fellowship, where we helped develop framework to improve coordination, accountability, effectiveness, and disaster response. So in that period, I became a founding member of the City of Houston Hoarding Coalition, and I served as a consultant supporting Puerto Rico Habitat for Humanity's federally funded disaster recovery mission. If any of you are aware of that, that was a lot of dollars that were misused in 2016. So they brought us in to kind of close the gaps on that, which we did during COVID, which was a challenge in itself. So since 2023, I've served as the general manager of the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District. So I address challenges in groundwater management in one of the fastest growing regions in Texas. My responsibilities include balancing conservation, regulatory compliance, property rights, regional planning, long-term resource viability, sustainability. I currently represent Montgomery County in Groundwater Management Area 14's joint planning process, and I was nominated in 2025 to serve as your Region H representative for the statewide water planning. So that's a discussion across 20 counties within your groundwater management area. So all of that to say, I shared this background. Really, I want to provide context to the perspective that I bring. Over the course of my career, I've led teams through disasters, organizational transformations, operational challenges, complex public policy discussion. And while the circumstances have varied, the common denominator was always people. The most difficult challenges were rarely technical. They were communication challenges, trust challenges, leadership challenges. So learning how to connect with people, especially during periods of uncertainty, disagreement, conflict, or emergency, has been one of what I would consider the most valuable lessons of my career. So the work's always been meaningful to me because the outcomes have always affected real people, real communities, and missions that matter to me. And through those experiences, I've developed a deep appreciation for the role of effective communication and what that plays in successful leadership. So hopefully that's some perspective I can bring for you today and be a helpmeet in some way. So enough about me. Let's dive in. Let's see. You have to let me know if these slides are working properly, but it's connecting through conflict and communication today. So my objectives are to understand the science of connection and conflict and the 5 conflict modes of the Thomas-Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument. That's called the TKI assessment, and increase your awareness of your own and others' conflict styles, identify ways to assess conflict situations, and select appropriate strategies more effectively. So I want to be clear, this is not conflict negotiation or mediation type training. It's really just to broaden your perspective for your EQ or your emotional intelligence. There's a lot of conversation around IQ generally, but in my experience, you can have a room full of very, very smart people. If they don't have a strong grasp on their EQ, their emotional intelligence, you really can't get anywhere. So there's the old, well, I don't know if it's an old saying, but I've heard this before, that when you're in college, you have 75% academic, 25% relational. But when you get into the work sector, it's the opposite. It's 25% academic, the rest 75% is relational. So we have a lot of young ones coming up that don't really understand the importance of leadership and how to manage conflict and how to have these conversations. And so you end up being your own roadblock. All right. I also want to bring to mind in that bottom left corner of this screen, I want to give, cite my references here. I did pull a lot of the information from these slides from the TKI assessment itself and adapted slides from Stephanie Scott, who is a master certified positive psychology coach and leadership consultant. I am not that, but I'm going to try to pull what I can from her and from a lot of the information I got from both references to help you out today. So our agenda: understanding conflict, science of connection, science of conflict, approaches to conflict, and then just reflection. So I was not shy about making slides. I'll be kind of moving through these pretty quickly. So understanding conflict, and this is more interactive for y'all. I want to hear what the first word is that comes to your mind when you hear the word conflict. No wrong answers here, just throw out some words.
Disagreement.
Come on, Tina. You hear conflict. What do you think?
When I hear conflict, I hear discussion.
Depending on who I'm talking to, anger, resentment, frustration.
Maybe conflict of interest.
Well, I think that's a good place to start because it's natural to want to avoid conflict and find it in a negative light, right? We hear conflict. There was a lot of negative words that came from that. And we want to keep our head down. We want to find the easy way. We don't want to get into a loss or rejection with who we're speaking with. We don't like emotional reactions. A lot of us will avoid those. We may just have personality or cultural differences. Who knows what it is? Or maybe I just don't care about that at all. So I'm going to avoid that conflict. But I want you to look at this, right? So we've got the definition of conflict. It's any situation in which the concerns of two people appear to be incompatible. It can be constructive or destructive, depending on how you handle it. So first, we have to look at when something is incompatible, we've got to determine where it's being driven from. So is it content or relationship, right? Is this a task issue? Do we have a difference in our ideas or opinion? Is this a process conflict? Like, I don't agree with the timing with which you're putting this forward. Or is this relational? I'm just tired of the fact that she wears these white button downs all the time. And now I've got a problem with process conflict. Like, sometimes it can be both content and relationship in nature. So it's good when you have a conflict to try to categorize where it's coming from first. And then I want you to look at this. We've got all those words you said for the most part, except for Tina, who dropped in discussion, that conflict is bad. That if there's conflict present in the workplace, then you've got something unhealthy, and I've got to eliminate conflict as a leader. But I would encourage you to focus on not eliminating conflict, because you're gonna be missing out on valuable ideas, your innovative needs. Anytime that you have an organizational change, anytime you're going to work on a process or fix a structure, which in a successful industry should be weekly, you're going to have conflict. It's a natural human response to go against change. Very few are very receptive to change. So instead of feeling like you need to eliminate conflict, I'm hoping through this presentation you can be encouraged to better manage conflict and expect that it's just a part of what you do as a leader. So I love this. This is the science of connection, right? So we've got our neocortex, our limbic system, and our reptilian brain. So you've got your primate, right? That's where all the cool stuff's happening. Your ideas, your concepts, your logic. That's your conscious planning. It's slower. And then you've got your mammal brain, your feelings, your emotions, where your love, joy, anger, grief, all of that arise. And then you've got the reptilian, which is your fight or flight. There's not a lot of thought going on here. This is when you are in your emergency response. You're in the middle of conflict. You're emotionally reacting. Typically, all three work together, except for under stress, that reptilian brain takes over, and we call it a hijack. So a lot of times when you're in situations of conflict, or you maybe have staff who's feeling there's an urgent issue, or it feels like an ER moment, right? Then they can be hijacked. So how we manage that hijack, not only in ourselves, but with our staff, can really determine how you're going to work through that conflict. So you've got these mirror neurons. They call it the monkey see, monkey do neurons. So that's like when you're experiencing something, someone else is having an emotion, we tend to react with the same sensation. So it's our empathy neurons, constantly mirroring the world around us. And when those needs are not getting met, we call it a mirror neuron gap. So how do you fill that mirror neuron gap? Well, that's by making that a connection, that acknowledgement. So if you've got someone that walks into your office, for instance, and they're high strung, they're hijacked, they're in their reptilian, they've got something that they feel like needs to be urgently taken care of. You might have a different perspective as a leader, that this may not be as important to you. So how you acknowledge that in that mirror neuron to prevent that mirror neuron gap is important. So even if it's just the acknowledgement, like, I see you, this is important to me as well. I'm right in the middle of a presentation, so I'm going to catch up with you in an hour. Not recognizing that, or going, the way that you manage that conversation, whether it's, I have higher priorities right now, I'll have to deal with you later. We have not acknowledged it. Now they're staying in hijack. We've created a mirror neuron gap. So even in those small moments, when you recognize someone, whether it's you or whether it's your staff, are in hijack, that's a really good time to be reflective on how you communicate, even if you can't approach a conversation right at that very moment. And I like that at the bottom. You can close that gap without having to agree with the person. It's just acknowledging to help bring them out of that hijack state. So how does this show up for you? We don't have to get into this together collectively, but I want you to consider times that you've encountered professionally. And we've all had bosses at one point, even owning our own businesses, that you felt like you've not been heard or validated or seen, and how your hijack can make you immediately want to change directions. I mean, I've definitely been in situations where I'm like, I want to quick respond it. I'm in hijack. Like, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do this anymore if they're not going to listen to me whenever I tell them this is happening immediately. That's me working and operating. I needed to work on my emotional intelligence, but as a leader, I could have had or my leaders at that time could have had a better, could have worked on this mirror neuron gap with me. And it goes both ways. So I just want you to consider those times and how this kind of shows up for you in your workplace. And then the science of conflict. To prevent or disrupt the hijack, you've got to feel seen, got to feel heard, validated, and understood. And so does the other person. So understanding those conflict modes. Our conflict style is generally based on your learned patterns and your habits, your learned behaviors, and certain conflict modes becoming overused. So this Thomas-Kilmann conflict mode model method, well, that's a lot of words. It expands our skill sets in all 5 modes and lets you better kind of see where you sit, where you fit, and increases your awareness so that you can understand what your natural response is and going into these conflict modes, and how you can kind of broaden that out. and understand others and their conflict modes as well. So we start with emotional intelligence, right? It's got these 4 quadrants. Got your self-awareness, understanding others, your self-management, and leading others. So self-awareness is recognizing your own triggers, like what puts you in hijack, and where does that come from? A lot of us work well at trying to introspect as leaders into our own self-awareness, but there's these other quadrants are equally important. So you've got understanding others. I have to acknowledge the emotions of those around me, whether or not I agree with their hijack is irrespective to the situation. If they're in it, then I'm going to need to participate in some way. And then self-management. How do I effectively navigate and inspire through my own emotions? How can I help guide and lead? And understanding how to implement. So self-management is kind of discovering what you do in those situations, and then how to guide and recognize it in others. Okay, these are the actual conflict modes. So these are the approaches, right? You've got competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. So I want you to consider what you think of yourself right now. And notice on the left there, you've got assertive versus unassertive, cooperative versus uncooperative. If these were laid across a floor, I want you to picture where you'd be standing, where you see yourself. What do you think? Do you think I'm assertive? I personally had put myself in the top right corner. I thought, man, I'm assertive and I'm a collaborator. I'm just on top of this thing. That's what I thought before I took the TKI assessment and learned a little bit more about myself. But I want you to kind of picture where you think you stand within these approaches to conflict. And now looking at it a little differently. So you've got in the competing side, it's more of in approaches to conflict, I'm going for my satisfaction. And a lot of this is visceral. You may not be thinking through this. This is your hijack response. And then there's also those that go into there's the accommodators. They're in their satisfaction mode. How do I get out of this conflict? Am I more for my own satisfaction, or am I more for their satisfaction? Am I somewhere in the middle? Am I avoiding it? Or am I collaborator? And so it's somewhere in between cooperation and assertiveness. So competing, and I got a couple other charts here, a little bit more about it. So this is the more, they're known for being persuasive and direct. They know the result they want in a conflict situation, they go for it. Nobody wants to be in any of these boxes, by the way. Nobody wants to say, oh, I'm a high competitor, or I'm a high accommodator, or a high avoider. But there is really no wrong answer. We touch in all 5 conflict modes, but you do have one or more that you naturally go to. So this is more of the I know my way is the right way. It's standing your ground. I explain my opinion assertively, and I influence other people to agree with me. And it's got a lot of strengths. When do you want to be a competitor in these 5 conflict modes? Well, we're great in a pinch. We're great in emergencies. We don't need to sit and collaborate and ask others their opinion. We're not going to avoid anything. You like people like competitors in those moments. And when you know you're right about something, it's very hard to get into a different conflict mode. And, the skill sets, competitors tend to have the ability to argue or debate their issues well. They stand firm, they're tough-minded, and they're resolute. But there is the potential to overuse. They wind up with unequal relationships with others. They may make others feel disempowered or unable to disagree, which is going to prevent further innovation from coming through. You might have your quiet folks that just don't speak up because you operate in this competitive mode. And then you've got the avoiders. Let me get my little sheet here. So yeah, not now, I'll come back tomorrow. No one loves to be in the avoider box. There's not always negatives in the avoiders. A lot of times they're admired because they do have a quiet presence. And for them, it also might be something that it's just not worth it to them. They don't have enough skin in the game. They don't have high stakes in this situation. So they can be very calculated on what they will or won't go into conflict mode about. But it's also, they can keep things bottled up. They're not necessarily meeting their own needs, and this can build up a lot of frustration. So if you have an avoider on your staff, you've got to be careful to make sure you make space, depending on what your conflict mode is, so that they have room to speak and feel confident and comfortable. Then you've got your compromisers. I say 200, you say 100. Let's how about 150? It's a great way to meet and find middle ground, and it promotes cooperation, and it can be done fairly quickly, as opposed to collaborating, which is going to take longer. But the weakness of the compromiser is sometimes neither party actually gets what they want. We found a way, I'll chop off a little here, you chop off a little here, even if I don't necessarily think that that's the right way to go. But I'm finding a compromise, and therefore I'm getting to a solution somehow, and I'm doing it quickly. And you've got your accommodators. I don't really think that that's a good way to go, but if you think it's best, I'll go with it. It's can be relationship or a social issue. They have a lot of strengths because they gain appreciation from others that are involved in a conflict because they're willing to give. They can also, as a weakness, build up resentment from denying their own needs, similar to an avoider. It might be difficult for those who want to get to the root of the problem to work with accommodators because they're tending to focus on making others happy. And we've got the collaborator. Let's work together. Let's come up with the best solution. They want to discuss all the details of a problem. They want to work through it together. Let's see, when to use it. Yeah, when both sides of an issue are important, and when there are differing ideas and you can test your own views and you have the time to understand those around you. It's great for innovative solutions and complex problems. We love a collaborator. The weaknesses, sometimes you don't have time for all that. I've worked in emergency disaster response. I'm sure there were better ways for us to operate, but we also had 48 hours to get all of the water out of these houses and get the walls down. So we might not be able to sit and hash it out with 15 different organizations. Collaboration is not always the best in conflict mode, depending on the circumstance. So this is an example of a TKI report and kind of how it works. So they don't do it on a 100% scale and then they chop it up. It's more 100% for each sector. And actually, I think the next slide tells you, gives you a little bit more about it. So it's kind of the number of times that you choose a statement within 30 questions for each conflict mode. And it gives you a percentage of people. And this has been highly worked through. The TKI is a branch off of Myers-Briggs, which is a highly respected, it's not necessarily a personality report, but you've got TKI, which is more how you manage conflict, and then Myers-Briggs is more how you manage in general. So, but they bridge off of each other, and they've done a lot of work to create accuracy in this test. So it does. So this profile looks like showing the high score. This is an avoider. So they, for instance, selected 10 statements for avoiding, and so they were therefore 95% higher within that 8,000 that they're using on this. So just kind of show you how that works. And then kind of coming back into these styles again, competing, efficient, can be decisive, but can also come across as bullying or overbearing and can ruin relationships, can be tough to work for. Collaborating builds trust, finds usable solutions, but in the disadvantage, it takes longer and requires several skills. Compromiser, both parties will feel satisfied and it's faster than collaborating, but it may not be the best solution and no one is really that happy with what you've come up with. Avoiding, no need to spend energy on problems that don't matter. They can calm quick tensions, but in the disadvantage, a decision isn't made, problems can persist, and you might look weak. Accommodators, similarly, it's quick, generates goodwill, but may not lead to the best solutions and can require giving up on your own interests. Okay, so yeah, this is actually my report, and I thought it'd be neat to just show you all because there I thought I was as a high collaborator, and I'm actually a 99% compromiser, which was really shocking. And the more I've been able to introspect from this report, I think it makes a lot of sense. I've worked with CEOs, I've worked with high-level positions, politicians. They're generally not coming to me to collaborate. They have a goal and they want it accomplished. So if I'm going to find any way to make it through, I'm going to compromise. I'm going to say, hey, we can both chop off a little here. Look, you can still get where you're going. And so it makes sense to me that, as throughout the tenure of my career, I've probably learned how to do a lot of backbends to make sure everybody's as happy as they can be. Maybe I'm not that satisfied, maybe you're not, but we got where we needed to go. And I don't always have a lot of time with it. I may have one conversation with a senator. That's all I've got. And so we've got to get to the solution at that time. And also the competitor. not that surprising to me that I have a high score on the competitor side, but it is something for me to be aware of. How tough am I on my team? I will compromise a lot depending on my audience, but I also will only go so far. At the end of the day, 2 + 2 = 4 to me, and that's the end of it. And we'll just keep moving, we'll chop through. But, I'm way down there in the collaborator. I'm more of an accommodator than I'm a collaborator, which was just shocking. And then, of course, any of you that know me well, I'm 2% avoidant.
That's a little high. It's on the higher side.
I don't know that. Yeah. There's not a lot I'll avoid. If you want to bring it to the table, we can talk about it. I'm not afraid of it. So, but I think it's a very beneficial test, not only for you, but for your groups, for your teams. And I'm working through that with my own staff right now, and so that we can better kind of understand our different languages and how we approach conflict. And I want to know, do I have even a single person in my entire organization that could stand up against me in competing? Because that's very unfair if they cannot. And I have to really watch how I operate in conflict. And when I'm in hijack, if I can be that disarming to, my own staff and my own people, because what am I going to miss if they can't bring their innovation to me, or they can't bring me solutions whenever I'm in a mode of conflict. So I think it's super useful. This is actually what the website that you can go to for TKI. And then again, I wanted to cite Stephanie Scott again, who brought this information of the Texas water leaders for me to look at and learn from the beginning. But I think it's an awesome tool. Again, if you're into introspective studies, this was the first time I'd ever done one that was just very centered around conflict. So I think as leaders, you should give it a shot and think about doing this for yourself first, and then potentially for your teams. That's all I've got for you today. Look at that time. Man, I thought I was going to run way past our hour mark here, Sean. So yeah, I'd love to open up any conversation, or if you want to see some slides again, or what y'all's thoughts are.
Nailed it. I mean, yeah, like perfect timing. Literally, you spent 30 minutes on it because we got started a little bit later, but you nailed that to the T.
Thanks. Yeah.
So identifying your conflict resolution type, has that changed the way you approach things or see things, or like what, when you took the test and you identified what your strengths or opportunities or weakness, whatever you want to call them, are, what did you do anything different at that time?
Yeah, almost immediately, Josh. I feel like, the way that this was lined up for us in the course that I was taking was we first went through Myers-Briggs, but we didn't get our results. We took the test, didn't get our results, and we talked kind of like we're doing now about all of the types. And then we had to make assumptions on what we thought we were throughout the entire test. And I was on point. I was correct. I thought I was more of a feeler than I was in that test. I'm more of a thinker than a feeler, surprisingly, but I was pretty close. The TKI, I was way off. And so for me to think, man, I don't understand how I operate in conflict, and to find that I am almost 100%, we never want a leader to be anything almost 100% either direction. I mean, you've got to have more of a middle bridge here, and that I'm that low in the collaborating, which is essentially the most effective way to create solutions. Yeah, I've spent some time. It's only been a couple of weeks for me. And that's why I've brought it to my team, because I want to see it all the way around the building. And we put that into our quarterly meeting. We're going to go through it together and talk about it and better understand how we relate to one another, and hopefully give them a window onto how I manage conflict, so they can approach conversations with me with a different perspective also, not just my learning, but theirs. But yeah, I think I've got a lot to really understand about myself more on this compromising.
Will that change your approach as well when you understand your teammates and how they manage conflict? Will you have a different approach for every single person?
Absolutely. We're doing Myers-Briggs as well. Okay,
I know that one.
And yes, I mean, I think that's the whole point, is to better understand yourself and how you deal with conflict, and then get a good window into how your team's dealing with conflict, so that I know I'm not coming in like a bulldozer and creating problems where maybe if I can back up a little bit. I don't have to always get into a compromising position. I don't always have to do the back bend. I may not need an immediate solution. That may just be something I'm trained to do because I'm constantly chopping through things. Whereas I can say, this needs to go back in the collaborator box. Maybe we need to spend a little more time on this, bring more of your innovation to the table. And I really want to know if I've got some high accommodators and avoiders, because that means I'm opening meetings to have discussions with them, and I'm not getting anything out of them. Maybe because they're operating against a competitor and they don't know how to speak to me well. So I think I'm more interested now in what my team's reports are going to put forward, so I can kind of lay that out and then better introspect. Now, if I've got 6 of us that are competitors, that's going to make sense too on why some of these conversations don't go as smoothly as they could. But I think there's a big benefit to these breakdowns. I get that no one's in a box and you're constantly evolving and you can change and learn and grow. And I may take this test in 5 years and be a high collaborator, or a high avoider. Who knows what happens over time. But yeah, I definitely think I've already started applying. And that was my first step. Let's get everybody else involved so I can see what theirs is and spend some time on this. Yeah.
On this, on the compromising, you rated really high on the compromising at 99%.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately I went to values. When I think of compromising, like you're compromising to meet these other people where they're at. Do you ever feel like in the last 12 to 18 to 24 months, you've compromised on who you are, your identity, your core values to meet these other people and compromise with them, these leaders, these CEOs, people that you're meeting with?
That's a great question. The answer for me is no. I think that's why I have a lot of respect in the field of politics, is because they understand that there are lines in the sand for me. So it makes me more trustworthy. And I mean that coming from a personal place. I have never felt in any position that I've worked in that I felt this sense of fear of my security if something were to go wrong, so I would compromise my values. I'm also a woman of faith, so I understand where my money genuinely comes from, and it's not my career. So I don't feel like that's an issue for me. I've definitely had those that have tried to push those boundaries for me. But I find in general, the majority of leaders that I talk to and high position really respect when you stand up for your own boundaries and your own lines in the sand, because they are around a different type of compromiser all the time. So now I can compromise in policy. I've definitely got a few things in my mind where they're like, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to handle it. And we had some bill legislation that came through on this last legislative cycle where I wanted to ball it up and throw it away. Like, that's where my real thought process was on it. But I also know my role in my space, and that this person can push this bill if they want to. So let me find a medium in here to where it's acceptable enough that I don't feel like we're compromising any of our resources for the future or any of our regulatory framework issues for the future, but you're still getting where you need to go. So I think it does definitely depend on your field. On how this works, but that is a great question. No, I don't. One of the pieces that I didn't do today, a slide I wish I would have now, is where you kind of, and maybe you do it on your own or with your teams. When you do the assessment, you can set up, like, let's just say you have 3 people that are accommodators. If you have a team of 12, and you've got 4 that are collaborators, 2 compromisers, you set them up together collectively and say, when is it a great time for you to be an avoider? When is it really beneficial for you to use this conflict style? When is it not beneficial for you to use this conflict style? And when is it absolutely out of the question for you to use this conflict style? And in general, I think in the out of the question for all of us is going to be when my ethics are questioned. I'm no longer a compromiser. I'm no longer avoiding or accommodating, or willing to collaborate or compromise. I think that you'd find there's some alignment there for all of us. We have our lines to where we go, that's enough, or your family time is being taken, things of that nature. But it's also a good piece of that exercise. We did something similar at Texas Water Leaders, where we were separated and got to kind of say, when is it good? Because we had some strong folks that were avoiders. It's not necessarily bad to be an avoider. And a lot of why they would say they use that conflict mode and their responses were, a lot of times it doesn't matter enough to me. There's not enough high stakes in that conversation for me to waste my time and energy. So they're very selective. It doesn't mean that they are weak. They might be viewed as that because you have competitors, high competitors, that we're just jabbing, or we're going to talk about every single item you bring to the table, and we want to talk about our solutions and our thoughts, or our extroverts that we just have a lot to say all the time. And in my sector, we have a lot of introverts. And so I have to be cautious of that because I can be abrasive, or I can come in and just want to talk about, I have a lot to say. So then I monopolize the room versus letting other people speak and have their chance to put in their ideas and their innovation. That is a good question, though.
This Tina, is someone into? Can I ask a question, Sarah?
Yeah, shoot.
Okay, so I speak to a lot of people in regards to a phone conversation, all kinds of people that have different levels of, I'm sure that would have different levels of TKI that probably have never ever heard of it. My question to you is, for just someone such as myself that speaks to people of all different types on the phone, is there any way, or anybody that you've talked to in the past that has used the outcomes from this study or this evaluation to help make them a better salesperson? Have you heard anything about that?
I wish I could say that I knew how this applies to different sectors and industries better, but I don't. With honesty, this is relatively fresh for me too. I think that's why I was excited to talk about it. I think it's only been a few weeks that I took this assessment, but I imagine it would be very helpful for you, Tina. I mean, I think just in general, it really doesn't matter your role or your industry to better understand how you operate in that hijack mode of conflict, because it's happening all the time, whether it's your personal life or your business, or the clients that you're speaking to are in hijack mode. And so you're navigating that with them. I just think it's always a great idea to learn as much about yourself as you can. And then, like Josh said, apply it as you wish. Some of it, you may not feel like it fully relates to you well. And you say, you know what, I just don't think I'm a avoider, or whatever the case may be. I think it's just good to sit back, look at it, understand where you fall within this, and then look at your strengths and weaknesses. And then you can apply it as you feel necessary from there. I mean, I think all things work in sales. Personally, I mean, the more you know yourself, the more that you can manage a conversation. Say real sales, right? You're not really selling anything. You're just giving people something they want. And so being prepared in those conversations. But if you're dealing with health insurance and stuff like that, I think you're definitely dealing with people in hijack. I worked in disaster resilience. I was dealing with everyone I talked to was in emergency mode, fight or flight. And it was just, I wish I would have done something like this back then. But the older you get, the longer you are in different roles in different industries, you naturally learn more about yourself. But I think these are really great tools to get you started. I mean, it's not going to answer all the questions for you, but definitely opens your eyes to some things. Again, sometimes we see ourselves with a lens that's not really there. I would have put money on that I was a high collaborator. Because that's what I think of myself. But really to see it in the way that I lined out through those answers, to know that I'm bending more than I think I am, was a good piece of information. It was valuable for me.
Yeah, I think if you're high on the, like this TKI report right here, it's an awareness tool. So if you're in sales, and we all are, right, as leaders and entrepreneurs, whether you're influencing your team, influencing customers, community, yada yada. But if you're high on the like this person right here on 95 percentile on avoiding, I can imagine how that would show up in sales and having hard conversations, and then really challenge. I mean, because if you're trying to influence somebody or having a hard conversation and they need life insurance, health insurance, or just leading a group, whatever, and you're wanting to avoid that because you don't want to hurt people's feelings, or the fear of getting rejected, whatever falls under that avoiding. I know it was low for you, Sarah, which, you know, and the flip side of that is I feel like that's what makes a great leader is you don't avoid those hard conversations. Because I've talked to a lot of business owners and leaders recently that they do not want to have those hard conversations and they avoid it. And you have to have those hard conversations. I mean, somebody in life insurance or health insurance, hey, this is the report that came back and this is what it's saying. But if you avoid because you don't want to hurt their feelings, then and you're high on that percentile and you're aware of that, then you can tackle that head on because you know human nature for you, you want to avoid those conversations. And I think that's what that's a level up moment, you know, by staring that down.
Sarah, I have one more for you.
Sure.
Knowing what you know now and taking the TKI report and all that other stuff and the different conflict resolution approaches that you've taken, do you notice a difference in day-to-day like attitudes play a role on when to approach something? So I understand somebody may be an avoider, somebody may be a competitor or something along those lines, but different days of their lives when they're dealing with different conflicts, do you see a certain time that you should approach someone with something, or does that fluctuate? Does it change?
I think it definitely depends on the circumstance and the style of the conflict. Like if it's an emergency, yeah, or if it's something that needs to be handled quickly, I definitely am a believer that you rip the Band-Aid off and you move forward on it. But I've worked really hard because I'm not an avoider. And even without this chart, I've known this about myself. I'd rather just move into something, have that conversation right now and get it behind me, or sometimes I need to sit on it a little bit longer and go sleep on it. I've got a great director of ops who works with me here she sent me home before. She's come in and been like, boss, you need to take it to the house and then come back tomorrow and we'll talk about this. Like, cause I can feel your frustration and he's going to feel your frustration. I don't think you're going to have a successful conversation. And I gauge that with myself as much as I can. I'm a big believer in like, let's just put this down for a minute because my emotions are too hot. Mm-hmm. And once I've regulated myself, then I'll be ready to have a conversation with you. And I'm not avoiding it. I'm not running from it. I just am preparing for a more fruitful conversation because I know myself well enough to know that if I'm triggered or I'm in some kind of emotional hijack, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth and it's probably not going to be fruitful. And so I think, yeah, that's one of those things. I don't know that I can pull that from this TKI assessment that, you know, the timing with which you handle conflict it's all going to be circumstantial, Josh. But I do think that just in general, as leaders, we need to be intentional about knowing where we stand. Are we in hijack? Do I have control of my emotional intelligence right now enough to have that conversation, or do I need to take a step back? I think it all starts with us. So in knowing our style of conflict and especially who we're going to have that conversation with, I think we should be intentional about that as well. I'm not going to come in hot as a competitor with an avoider, but I've got some competitors in here that they want to go head to head with me that way. And it's not in an unprofessional way. We're not arguing. We both just have high energy and it's, you know, we play sport the same way and that's okay too. Learning the different languages of everyone that you work with in your organization, I think is just super important, especially your managers that have people underneath them. Everything trickles down, right? It's the domino. How I manage and lead them is how they're going to manage and lead my team. And so, you know, the hierarchy was never supposed to be, you know, the leader's got some sort of elevated position. No, we're actually at the bottom of that hierarchy. And so I think the more that you can do to examine these sides of yourself, understand how you respond, is just the better that you're going to operate. And then you'll follow the fruit from your organization. Even just bringing this stuff to my team and having these conversations and everyone getting excited about their results has created a really cool camaraderie and a lot of fun conversation. And they feel seen, they feel heard, they get to talk about themselves a little bit and everyone's listening and curious. And oh, well, that explains why that conversation didn't go well with you and I that one time. You know, it just kind of opens up that window for you to introspect in a different way and connect with one another. That was a long answer to a short question, Josh.
No, it was a good one because you do have different personalities, different types, different people that fall differently on the TKI report. But depending on what the subject matter is, whether it's personal, whether it's business, family, what have you, and what day they're having, that may change. They may be a competitor on a certain subject on a certain day. They may be a avoider on a different subject on a different day. So having that adaptability to be able to read them and understand them and know that they're what type of personality or type of where they fall in the TKI report is going to depend on the approach, but also the day. So it's constantly, it feels like it's a moving target,
Well,
but you at least need a ballpark.
I will say this, the conflict mode itself, the instrument says that you do have like where your high score is generally how you respond to conflict in general. So like I'm not responding as an avoider in my personal life, and then maybe at this one sector of my organization that I don't like touching. My natural response is the compromise. And so I think I want to be clear on that. Though you can touch on all 5 of these, the test is showing you what your natural response is, and that's in all conflict.
Okay, that answered my question.
Okay.
That right there. Thank you.
You got it.
I'm
I
curious
love
on
it. I can't wait to take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm super curious now.
what do you think you are, Cody? Number 1.
You know, looking at it now, like knowing Sarah the way I do, and then looking at hers, like that surprised me myself. Like, so I can only imagine. Honestly, I don't know. It has me really, I'm going to take this within the next week.
Awesome.
And then I think I want my whole team to take it too. Because I love what Sarah said. The more you know, the better we can serve, right? And I love this, Sean. You were doing this with everybody that joined Level Up and Live, taking the personality test, you know, and it gave such an amazing perspective to me. One, learning about myself more than I thought I did, right? Because the truth is we think we really know ourselves, but until we stare things down, like issues or problems or triggers, things of that nature, you don't really know yourself.
Yeah.
And I love it because this helps you not only stare it down, but give you more tools to become a better person ultimately. So yeah, I can't wait to take this. I'm intrigued.
Awesome. I want to hear all of y'all's results if you do take it.
I'll send it over to you.
It's so neat. Well, great. I hope this is a help me in some way. I thought it was so cool when we took it, learned about it, and I'm glad I was able to have a space. Thank you, Sean, to come and talk about it and send it your way. And I hope it makes a difference if you use it for yourself or for your groups or your teams.
That's it.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Sarah, for being here, spending the time, energy, and effort, and everybody else for being on here. I know I made a ton of notes, so I'll be taking the assessment as well. So this has been super valuable. Really appreciate you. And this is only just making us better and stronger and providing value. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank y'all. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Sarah.
See ya.
See y'all Friday.
See you Friday.